Hi, everyone. This is Nancy Kuykendall with Eileen Moynihan. We are back for our second installment of Author's Life. We are authors kind of across the world from each other. Eileen is in Ireland, and I'm in North Dakota, United States. And Eileen, what is the area of Ireland that you're in?
Well, I would be in the Midlands, more or less going from the Midlands to the west. I'm in County Roscommon, but right next door to County Longford.
Okay, words we're not used to hearing, town names and city names we're not used to hearing. But we are far apart, but together on Zoom, and we are somewhat newbies to doing this. So we hope we have no technical difficulties. Today, our title or our subject matter is formatting hurdles and the issues you might run into as an author as you're formatting your print book and your ebook. And they are quite different, and they're different depending on if you have photos or not. Well, Eileen is children's book pro and has written a lot of those and poetry, and she's done photos in her books where I have not personally, although I have helped another do photos. So Eileen's going to begin, and she's going to tell us about formatting issues within the books that she's done.
Hello, everybody. Well, when you start, you don't really realize that when you're adding images, that causes more problems than even just trying to organize the text in a book. So I usually start off by working in a Word document and I insert the illustrations. Now, there's several ways you can produce a picture book. One is to have the picture on one side and your text on the other, and then you're not going to have any major problems. But the problem with that is that you could have too many pages, and the more pages you produce, the more expensive it's going to be. And the next one is to have the illustrations and the text side by side on the same page, and then you're running into the problems of, will the text fit around the illustration? Do I have to make the illustration bigger or smaller? Does it fit in properly? And you don't realize until you start doing it how difficult it is. And the last problem is, and I've actually avoided doing this at all, is when you actually have your whole image on a page and then you've tried to insert the text over that, because sometimes you might have to add a white background because you can't see the text. And other problems are if people include text in the actual artwork, and then you have to change the dimensions, you might not be able to see the artwork, the actual what's written on, say, a shop sign or street sign. So that can be difficult too. Now, my biggest problem, as I said, was probably trying to fit words around the illustration. You don't know how it's going to look. So it's trial and error, because when I work in the Word document, then I have to change it to a PDF, then load up the PDF to Kindle Direct Publishing. And then you've got things like bleed, which is where the edges are. Are they running over the side of the page? Are they going into the bind? And if you put it, you can use a kind of a preview thing on Kindle Direct Publishing, and it will say, "Oh, this, You say, what's wrong
I've
with this?
experienced that.
Yes. And eventually you think you've got it right, and then they do a manual checkup, and then if there's formatting problems, they get back to you and say, well, you have to do this and you have to do that, and it's all very technical. So it really is trial and error a lot of the time. And then with my poetry books, again, it's like different styles. People might like the poems that all start on the left-hand side and go across, or some people like it centered, where it makes a different shape, or some people like double spacing, some people don't. So I did my poetry book, and a friend of mine said, oh, why have you got those big space of lines in between? So I went back and I changed it to single lines. And you just can't please everybody, but you have to suit yourself in the end, what you think looks right. And in another book, it was a poetry book for children with illustrations. Now I had the illustrations on one side and the poems on the other, but the illustrations were kind of going into the bind, into the center of the book, and it didn't look right. So we changed over the pages. So I think we had the pictures on the left and the text on the right, and we changed them around to have the text on the left and picture on the right. I think that's what we did in the end anyway. So there really is like lots of issues to deal with. Now, printing is bad enough, but when you get to the ebooks, that's even more difficult because that takes on a life of itself,
Definitely.
life of its own. So, what about yourself there, Nancy? You've done a few ebooks.
Well, I agree. The ebooks are more difficult. Now, I haven't formatted them myself. So far, I have not done any formatting of my own. However, like you stated, in Word, I usually set it up as close to what I want it to look like as possible before it's turned into a PDF by a formatter that I use. And I do know that the print books usually are easier to handle and come out like you expect, and they go to ebook, and they might kind of get kind of squirrely and things move to a different place and page turns be odd, or depending on what device somebody is looking at, one person may see it one way and another person another way. So it's hard to actually make those uniform, I think.
And of course, then with the ebooks is a PDF for the print books, and I think it's a doc or docx or HTML for the ebooks. So
Yeah,
again, it's different.
here they've been saying, well, I use an EPUB for the ebook.
Right.
So
And that works differently, does it?
I think so, but I think that I read recently that at least some places are changing, like they don't use what was called Mobi anymore. I'm not real familiar with the differences, but I've been using EPUBs.
Right. Because I don't know if I thought that once you put it up, then it turns into a Mobi, or I'm not sure.
I'm not sure
See,
either. We're not
that's
the
the problem.
technical
You
people.
see, I'm not. We're not technical.
No, we're
So
not the
these are the
technical
issues
people.
you're dealing with, and trying to understand them, and trying to. There are a lot of good YouTube videos if you've time to watch them. Now, I had a few issues with one of my books, the print book. No, it was the ebook actually, and I got a lot of feedback that, oh, it's a shame the story was. It took me out of the zone of reading the book because it was annoying me the way it was presented in the ebook, and so I had to get onto someone to do that for me and fix it.
I think that
And
is
I had to get
important.
a few good reviews to change the
Yeah,
reviews.
I think that's important because not every reader is as tolerant as others. And if it's bothering them, they don't want to continue. And so we want it. I mean, our whole purpose is to make it readable for our readers and have them enjoy it.
Exactly, yes.
Sometimes it takes more than one try.
So if you have a few bad reviews for bad formatting, then you need to get a few good reviews afterwards.
Yeah.
Or to say, look, will get someone to say that this has been fixed for you.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been doing mostly reflections and fiction. You started some fiction there as well, where you wouldn't really be using pictures, but you were using some kind of design, Nancy. How does that work out?
Yes, I haven't used photos myself. I'm considering, just for the fun of it, trying to put one in the book that I'm currently working on. It might fit in there somewhere at the beginning or the end. So far, I've done just text. I did help a client that I edited for put photos into his book. And that was a different experience. First, I'll just talk about the text. Text is easier, and none of those issues that you come across with putting the photos, in your books. I've seen all of those ways that you discussed, and they can be nice. I guess if they get done correctly, all of those ways can be nice. In what I like to do is, though I'm not a formatter yet, I would like to learn to format. I've looked into it some, but as I work in a Word doc, like I said, and I try to make it look as much like I want it to look once it becomes a PDF. So though I'm not a formatter, I like to think of the little tiny, what I call creative aspects of it, where, some books, maybe more in earlier times, page one was always with chapter one. and Roman numerals came first and after. Where nowadays, sometimes you see page one, I think right after the title page. I kind of like my page one to be with the chapter one. It may not show you have quite as many pages in your book, but front pages, they're not so many. So I like to sort of decide my exact page numbering. And I like to have, so far in my books, I think all of them, but maybe one, I have some kind of decor around the chapter headings or either the title or the number or both. And I like to find something that I think matches the style of that book. Like when I did write the fiction, the Old Woman series, because it's discussing an elderly woman and her life as an elderly woman, I wanted something that looked old style around the chapter headings. Now,
Yes.
I didn't choose that, but my formatter chose one and I loved it because it looks like an old fashioned mirror frame
Oh,
around
lovely.
that. And I just said, yes, that's exactly what I had in my mind. But I didn't know how to tell him, but that's what he chose. So, I rely on the gentleman who formats for me to come up with some of what I express to him, or I try to tell him, the fonts, I like maybe, and when you read books, sometimes you see the first letter of the first word of a chapter capitalized much bigger,
Yes.
larger than the rest. I like that look, especially for some books, maybe not every book. So these are all little details that intrigue me that I like to tell the formatter, could I please have my page number start here? Could you come up with some decor, something like this for chapter headings? Could you use, that large letter at the beginning of each chapter? Little things like that that I think make the book more creative looking or pleasant to look at least from my point of view. So, we're
I
pleased.
like,
Pardon me?
I was just going to say, I like all those things too in
Yes,
books.
it pleases me, and I hope it pleases readers. I'm trying to decide in my newest book. They're all like one page type writings, maybe into a second page. And I'm thinking I might want each and every one, there's 90, to start on the right hand page. Chapters, well, certain pages start on the right hand page, like chapter one will start on the right hand page. Um, and I'm trying to decide, I want to center it like you were speaking of, rather than have it on the side, because they are short. I thought I might center them and then between each one, so that each and every one could start on the right page. Maybe on that back page, I would have some kind of quote or design. I'm not sure yet, but those are the kinds of ideas I think of when it comes to formatting, that even though I'm not doing it myself, that I can forward to the person who's going to do it for me, and try it out.
Yes, like you, I got somebody from 5RR, isn't it?
Yes. From Thriver, is that what you said?
Yes, and it is worthwhile paying someone to do something you
Mhm.
really don't feel happy with about yourself.
Right.
Oh, some of my books, my daughter helped me too, but she's not always available or
Right.
wants to be asked. So,
Well, I don't have anybody near me who can do that and no family members, but I did one time take a book and redo the cover myself. And I used Kindle Create. I guess that's what it's called, Create.
yes,
And I really didn't figure it out that well, but I got something that was pleasing enough to me, but not 100%. And so I lived with it for a short time. And then I said, I think this book can look a lot better if I get somebody who's a pro to do it.
mm,
So the gentleman that I've used for a number of years now, I sent it to him. I said, could you please improve this cover? I'd like to keep this, this, and this. And I said, but do your magic. And he did, and I loved it. So if you get to know somebody who can format or do covers for you and you like their designs and how they work, then it's easy, as you go forward, it's easy to sort of share ideas and them know sort of what you like. And you might know kind of what they might create. So he had the skills to do things I didn't. And that's another part of formatting.
it is. Well, I usually use the cover creator myself, and
Mhm.
I might have a picture that somebody's done for me or photograph, and I've tried to do it myself
Mhm.
most of the time. So everything is a learning experience.
It is just, you have to start somewhere. So we just, start and go forward. Now, I haven't had any trouble with PDFs. I think I think I may have one time had one that Kindle said, oops, there's a problem here. And I don't remember what it was. The other thing that they'll do is, like I had on my client's book, it come up and say there are 23 spelling errors you might want to check. Well, I
Wow.
knew immediately that it was Hawaiian words because
Okay.
we had a lot of Hawaiian, and there was a chant in there that they had done in Hawaii, and I knew it was those words, and sure enough, it was. So I just said ignore because it had been spell checked many, many times, and that's what came up. Those words that were not usual, to English or
Yes.
anything we knew. So it was not a problem. I've had more trouble with the ebooks. Maybe they just don't sit quite right in the book like they do in the print book. And I'm not sure they always can, but I've had some do better than others, and I'm not sure why. And I do know, as we said before, each device is going to show it a little bit differently. And I once had one that had gotten set up incorrectly, and we stopped before I ever tried to publish it, and that was corrected. We found it soon enough. So I think those are trickier and more important to, well, they're all important to look at closely, but with
Yes.
ebooks, you got to look at them really closely because when you're sliding those pages over, or however people are reading this way or that way, they don't always do the same thing or follow like they should. And now in my client's book, we had trouble with the photo captions sitting where they should, but only in one chapter.
All right.
Only one chapter. So that made no sense to us. Why is it only one chapter that they want to go over there rather than stay here?
Strange, isn't it?
We finally gave up for now, but that may be something we go back and look at.
And were the size of the photos bigger or smaller? Or...
Um, some were a little bigger. There was one in particular. Well, there's one in particular he wanted larger, and we made it larger. But the formatter did a really good job setting that on the page very closely to what we had put in the Word doc. And I told him that when we wanted bigger. There was one that had writing on it. It was like a picture of a paper that had a poem written on it. And to be able to read that poem, we needed to have it bigger, but we couldn't go too big or it was just distorted. So there's all those kinds of things to look at. I mean, that was my very first experience with trying to put photos in a book. So I saw
Yes,
there's a lot more to it, which you already know.
yeah, it's the same now with the illustrations on the ebook. Again, it's harder than even the print books. So should we
Yeah.
say because the spacing you could have a
Mhm.
load of, and then you could get text getting all kind of jumbly, I call it.
Yeah, it kind of moves to other places, and you're like, why did it
Yes,
go
yeah.
there?
So it is quite frustrating. So there, I mean, there are programs there that you can use, previewers and things with Kindle. And if you're good at that kind of thing, great, go for it. But if you are despairing and pulling your hair out, then it is well worth looking to see if you can get somebody else to do it for you.
Right. And even if you enjoy it, like I do enjoy, learning technical things, but if it's going to take me many more hours or days than it would take a pro formatter to do it, I am willing to pay that amount, which in my case has not been extravagant. I've been very fortunate in that for him to do it in a matter of a day or two, or even hours if he's not backlogged too much by other customers. So just getting it done more quickly and more professionally in my case has helped me a lot. But that's not to say I don't want to learn to do some of that.
Yeah, it is often financial.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to spend money on our books because we can't afford it. But probably, maybe if you really want to have a good book, it's worth waiting and saving and
Mm-hmm.
wait to put it out there and just take your time with it, Joe.
It is true because more than one person, including myself at one time, has gone ahead and published their book, maybe without getting approved first. But either way, you've got to redo it, whether you see it in approved or otherwise. And you're like, oh, my goodness, this didn't work out right. This needs to be redone. And you really don't want to have it out there for sale very long before you correct the big things. So it's worth taking your time and taking a few deep breaths and not rushing. I mean, the excitement of it can get us
It is,
get it
because you're
out.
so anxious to get it out there. But it's far more disappointing to have people come back to you and say, well, no, it doesn't look good.
Mm-hmm. I've had someone contact me once about spacing issues too, but I purposely had done that particular spacing for that particular book and not another book. So I said, well, it's okay. Thanks for telling me, but for this book, that's what I wanted. And so I left it because I had a specific reason for that. But in other cases, no, I would do it differently, the way it was pointed out to me.
And I found you getting people on 5RR is good, but they might be from a different culture or a different country, and sometimes there might be a communication problem where they don't completely understand what you're getting at. So it's good to have a good rapport with whoever you're working with, and that they're willing to make changes.
The gentleman I work with is in Pakistan, and so it's daytime for him when it's nighttime here, and vice versa. But we've been able to work that out well, and he does speak English, and I don't think we've really had any communication problems. Maybe a time or two I wasn't totally clear or he didn't totally understand, but it is true because there are very many companies or countries represented through Fiverr, and different languages. They will show you there, what languages they speak and all of that kind of thing, so you can have an idea. Because if you're a foreign speaker, like if I were not an English speaker, I might want to be looking for somebody who is not primarily an English speaker.
Yes.
But since I am an English speaker, I need somebody who speaks English.
But even with people that speak English, it can be different.
Yes, even English
Yes.
to English. American or American to British or, into Ireland, our English can be different.
Like, even the spellings can be different.
Spellings for sure. We've run into that before. I think, Eileen, that we're just about out of our time for today. So did you have any
lovely talking.
Any last thing you wanted to say?
Just saying, take your time, maybe look up a few YouTube videos, try and do it for yourself. If it's really completely frustrating you, go and get help.
Yeah, I would agree. It's definitely worth learning some of that because you can do it in your home without having to contact someone else and spend the time there. There are times I think it's faster to do it ourselves, and times I'm sure it's much faster, it has been for me, to get help. So you just have to weigh it, see what you learn. It's a growth process day by day, right?
It surely is.
That is an author's life, growth process day by day in every area, from writing to formatting to publishing to
social media.
I'll show you. Oh, yeah. So we have many more topics to share with you. I don't know if we know for sure what our next topic will be yet, but it will be in the next quarter. At least that's the plan for now.
I look forward to it.
Me too, Eileen. Thanks for joining me. It's always fun to get together.
Thank you, Nancy.
See you later. Thanks everybody for listening.
Bye.
Bye-bye.